All right, guys, here we go with another episode of the Building Freedom Podcast. Today, I have one of our coaches, Mike DesRosiers, on here with us. I wanted to bring Mike on because we had a really killer episode last week with Dennis. Dennis is a builder out of Michigan that we work with. Incredible story. And what I thought is, yeah, it was a great story. Um, Lots of success there, captured all kinds of dollars that was leaking in his business, right? Money that's falling through the cracks. So, guys, on this podcast, we're often talking about where money is bleeding in our business and what we need to do to capture those dollars. If we don't capture those dollars, we can't grow and scale a business because we don't have the money and the resources in the business that we should have with the profitability we should have to be able to grow and scale and add the people and the systems and the structure that we need to go to the next level. So I wanted to bring Mike on here and really have Mike share that journey in working with Dennis. And there's lots of challenges along the way, and I want you to be reflecting on your own worlds and your own business as we go through this episode and seeing, hey, where do I fit into this mold? Where am I like Dennis in this? What do I need to do differently in order to get the results that Dennis got through the shares that Mike is going to have here? Guys, again, I always say grab a piece of paper, pen, something to write on, something to capture some of these gems because there's going to be a lot of them here in the next 30, 45 minutes as we roll through this. Mike, thank you so much for jumping on here. This is going to be an incredible 30 minutes, 45 minutes with you. So, Mike, before we get going, just tell us a little bit about your background. You've been on here before, but just maybe your journey working with some clients over the last little while. What's some insights and shares you can have?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Randy. Yeah, so I've been with Four Level now going on 8 months. And before joining Four Level, I spent 20 years working in the construction industry in a variety of different roles, both in sales and operations. Primarily in operations, that's kind of where I found my niche. I also worked in the manufacturing side as well for James Hardie Building Products. That's where I got the majority of my sales training from. So I've got a pretty well-rounded view of both working in the construction field and also for manufacturing as well. And over the last 8 months, I've been working with a host of four-level clients at a variety of different levels, just helping them work through the day-to-day challenges that they're facing, and helping them get to the next level and reach their goals.
And before we jump into Dennis specifically about what had to happen there and help how you helped him through that, maybe in general terms, what are some of the common threads that you're seeing amongst the builder modelers contractors that we work with? Some of the common challenges, those threads.
Yeah, absolutely. So, probably the most common thread is, a business that relies heavily on the owner. So the owner's heavily invested in sales and marketing and operations. A lot of the processes for how that business has become successful and is thriving currently lives in their heads, and they haven't really quite figured out a way to get that out of their heads, get the right people in the right seats, in order for them to be able to pull away from the business and think about it overall in a more strategic level.
And I mean that really does lead perfectly into Dennis's story, right? Like,
Yeah,
Dennis was no different than anyone else in terms of everything lives in his head. In fact, what's kind of interesting, I wasn't thinking about this until just now. We were on a meeting with Dennis this morning, and we captured or found just that one last thing that's living in his head, right? So maybe you can even touch on that one last thing that's living in his head. That it's like, yeah, he's still holding that. That's that piece we have to still get pulled out, right?
absolutely. Yeah. So the conversation we had this morning centered around the way that they take a project from meeting with the client and signing that contract and actually executing that and building that out in job tread, and how that translates to the rest of the team through operations, finance, and then finally closing it out. Being able to issue invoices and purchase orders and work orders for their trades and stuff like that. So, a lot of that is still living in Dennis's head, and the way that he structures the budgets for his builds lives in his head still. And he's only really the one that can build out those budgets. It's a lot of manual. He's got the templates there, but it's a lot of manual adjustments, adding in custom elements. A lot of his builds are like semi-custom, I guess you could say, where it's pretty cookie cutter, but there are some additions or add-ons or screened-in porches or things that he wants to give his clients that kind of give them exactly what they're looking for in a home. And he doesn't really have a system or a way to build that into his current budget template and be able to then translate that to the rest of the team so that they know how to execute, know what to order, and know how to assign the right trades, so on.
And to me, that leads to the simple fact, and guys, if you're listening to this, you can't see me pointing to the elephant that sits on my desk behind me here. But that elephant there is representative of what we're trying to do here, what we need to do if we're ever going to grow and scale a business, or ever get to what Dennis has achieved and pulling off here, is really we need to be eating that elephant one bite at a time. And part of this is, yeah, this is just Dennis's next bite, right?
Hmm.
But let's kind of go back in time here, if you would, and do your best to, remember back when you started working with Dennis. You started working with him fairly early on when you joined us. Dennis has been with us 2.5 years, but transitioned over to Mike. Just with Mike's strong operational background, felt that Mike is going to add a lot of value to what Dennis is doing and what Dennis needed. And that's, when you jumped into that role. But what were some of the challenges that you knew right away that you needed to solve if you were to start the right bites of the elephant at that time, from when you met Dennis? Could we start there?
Yeah, for sure. So, when I first started working with Dennis, he had a very successful operation. There wasn't any standout challenges that he was really suffering from, and it felt status quo. He was kind of comfortable with the way that things were going. But then, when we started kind of engaging with each other, the first questions that I started to ask him were like, do you have day-to-day fires that you're putting out or questions that you're being asked constantly or things like that? And he's like, oh, yeah, well, like my team is always coming to me with this, or I'm challenged with this, or I don't really have a way to translate my knowledge into somebody else in order for them to be able to sell or estimate or those types of things. And so the first thing that we did was actually do a business process audit. We talked about it obviously on the last podcast to really get an understanding of his entire business from start to finish, where the gaps were, where the most amount of pain or the biggest challenges that he was facing were. And then we used that as sort of a targeted approach to, these systems do exist. They are functional, but can they be better? And the answer was yes to the majority of that.
And
And
let's decipher functional to better.
mhm,
And better, I think there is terminology about what better actually means, right? So I
yeah,
want to touch on functional, what better is, and what better truly means to an owner that is running a business that's dependent on him or her.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, Um, I'm trying to think of one specifically, for example. So the sales process would probably be a really good one to touch on. So at the time that Dennis and I met, he was the one that was heavily involved in the sales process from the moment the client either walked in the door or reached out to them via the web or phone. He was the one that was reaching out to them. He was the one that was doing discovery calls with them. He was taking them through the model homes. He was involved in the sales process from start to finish. And as we got further and further down the path and, continuously reminding him of what his goals were of getting further away from the business, being able to focus more on a strategic level and eventually be able to exit, I said to Dennis, like, the things that you're doing with your clients, obviously nobody has more experience than you do at selling to your clients. Nobody knows how you build the way that you do or has the experience level that you do. But is this a skill that you can transition to somebody on your team? And the more that we discussed it, the more that he realized, yes, 100% this is possible. And in fact, we have the right person on our team, and that's Emily, because she was in the sales office with him every day. She was hearing the pitches that he was giving to his clients, the conversations he was having, the questions he was asking. And she really was starting to understand his world better. And so all we did was spend probably 2 or 3 times sitting down and really understanding what that SOP was for sales, building a sales script, and being able to then transition that to Emily. And at the time, he was functional. He was doing it fine. But obviously, as you want to start to think about exiting a business and scaling up at the same time, you also want to be able to get that system better for whoever it is that's taking it over from you, right? So the better
And I
was
think
us.
that's the key, right? It's a let's not transition someone or transition it to someone and have this status quo mode that you mentioned earlier. Let's not, just transition what we do now. Let's take it to another level as we're transitioning. Otherwise, we're really not improving things. We're just transitioning something that was functional. That's
Yeah.
not cool, guys. That's not where we want to go. That's not the level we want to play at.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. So, as we went through the process of understanding what his sales system was, we were continuously refining it. And that got Emily involved as well because we wanted to make sure that we were not just handing her a script and saying, follow this. It was us referencing what we had already started to develop with her and saying, hey, you've walked through some of these sales with Dennis. What do you think? Is there ways that we can improve this? Is there certain questions that we need to be asking in order to extract the answers that we need? Is there a tool that we can use to be able to capture all of that information and be able to accurately build that into the budget template that they need when they're selling a house so that the client is getting a much more curated experience? And she was involved in all of that. And we've built a much, much stronger sales system that he's closing way more consistently on, as you see in the numbers you talked about last week. He's gone from 20 to 30 homes this year, right? So,
And and there's the gold, right? This is someone else has taken it off his plate, Emily. He's less involved, and the close rate has increased by a better curated experience for the buyer, for the client.
absolutely.
And I think we have this mindset, as you said, and this is, no doubt everyone hearing this is going, yeah, but I'm the one that closes and I'm the one that, I'm the only one that can do that. And I believe that there is some truth to that if we don't transition this properly, right? So
hmm
in order to do this, that mindset shift have to be there for the builder, for Dennis, right? For ourselves, because remember, we said, make sure that this applies to you as we go through this. Dennis's story, yeah, it's Dennis's story, but it has to apply to who's listening here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other interesting part that came out of that exercise as well is Dennis, obviously the most experienced person on the team. He'd been running the business for a number of years, and nobody really knew his world better than he did and would be able to sell like he did in his mind. As we went through and we talked through the sales process, he actually recognized that there were some things that he probably could have been doing better. And that's where the development of that sales process got
Sure.
even more sweet over time.
Man, it's fantastic. And that is such a great analogy of functional to better to now it's just tweaks, small tweaks, which is still in process, right? It's kind of never done, right? Like
hmm
that's something if we're gonna now we start measuring, right? So remember, we're always measuring, guys. If we measure, we can improve. And now they're just tracking that ratio and that percentage and who's coming in the door. what that looks like and continuing to make small tweaks now, right?
100%. Yeah, like the cool part of developing the sales process is we actually got Emily working with Mitch on our team and building out a sales dashboard within JobTread so that she was able to manage their funnels. So when clients came in, she was keeping track of who they were. She was going through the sales process with them. She was transitioning to them to stage 2 or 3. And then eventually Dennis would get involved on the tail end of that sales process to close out and close the contract because he's still stuck with that budgeting and building out the final build for the client. So he still does have to be involved there. And again, we uncovered today
Just
that's
one
the
piece
last.
away. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just one piece away from him not being involved in that entire process anymore.
And
And he's
so,
more and more comfortable with that now.
right, there's the gold that we get more and more comfortable when we see we need to see the actions that we are taking that starts to work. It gives me some confidence and trust in letting go. And
Absolutely.
and one of the hardest things as owners, guys, we know this is trusting and letting go. The only way we can do that is to actually give it a go, trust it, verify it. We verify it through the numbers, right? The KPIs and how we're verifying. It's working. As I work, I build more confidence and trust. I then can let go more. And just seeing him in our meeting this morning, I haven't been on a meeting with Dennis in probably a handful of months. Then and just seeing him this morning was fantastic. Just with the team and the confidence level amongst the team is it's through the roof. So we went that, so you had that starting point, you found through process audit. So let's circle back to process audit. This is what everyone needs to do. We need to look at our overall process, see where we have gaps, pain points, what's working well, what's not. Right.
Hmm.
And so what was, another piece that we knew needed to, have another bite of the elephant that needed to be taken seriously if we're gonna get him to where he wants to go.
Yeah, I think the like the overall operations piece, so like looking at how he was executing once the contract was signed and he's starting the build, and how well integrated they were with JobTread. It was obviously they worked with our integrations team. They had an integration done in JobTread, and they were call it 65% of the way there. They were starting to use it. Everybody was consistently messaging within the tool. They were building up budgets. They had to do templates in there. They were getting there, but it wasn't fully ingrained in the culture of the business yet. And
Mhm.
so, that was conversations that we were having with not just Dennis, but everybody on his team. Like, this is something we need to be consistently using. If we're uncovering gaps that are happening within JobTread, let's address those gaps and let's start using the tool to the best of our ability. I always say like garbage information in, garbage information out, right? So if we're not filling it and using it and actually living within the tool, then it's never going to give us the information that we need. And so the better that they've gotten at it and the more that we've looked at it and tweaked it and adjusted budget templates and schedule templates and to-dos, primarily Emily has been their job tread champion working alongside Mitch. And they've tweaked it and gotten it to the next level. That was part of the conversation we had today too.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Working with the team, we know not all team members are excited about change,
Yeah,
right? Anyone, if we ever deal with that, have you ever come across it?
for
So,
sure.
so we know that that's a common thread. Um, how was the working with the team in terms of change, buy-in? I think even previous to you, kind of taking over there, I know there was a number of those challenges throughout this time. Have you found more and more buy-in with the team?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it all centers around, and this is my belief, it may not necessarily be the 100% truth, but my belief is if you are fully transparent with the team about what your goals are and you're clear about what the mission and vision is for the business, and you communicate to the team that the goal is to scale the business to bigger and better while having the right systems in place so that people can be operating comfortably within their roles without being overwhelmed or stressed or any of those things, and just continue to grow and get better over time, then I think that becomes the North Star for everyone on the team. It's like, they're not just a number, they're part of the development and growth of the business. They're not ever feeling like they're overwhelmed or they don't have any help or nobody has their back. So I'm just big on like being transparent and letting everybody know. We want everybody to be happy. We want everybody to be better. We want everybody to get to the next level. And if the business is getting to the next level, their role is growing and developing over time too.
Yeah, brilliant. The the idea that their opportunities grow is critically important, but it also is critically important, and I think you said it so well, is that they don't feel overwhelmed in the process. They don't like we're not asking, you to work 30 hours a day here. We're asking you to not be overwhelmed in the process and help this actually improve your life and lifestyle as we are scaling this business.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a critical piece. If someone feels like, hey, you want to grow this, but it's all on me, or I have to step up and work twice as hard, I'm not as excited about that,
Yeah, no.
right?
Definitely not.
And but I mean, this is the world that we live in that I think far too often we have this mindset of if I'm going to grow, I just need to grind harder. This isn't about grinding harder. It's just about working smarter, that, cliche term, but we truly do need to work smarter in the process and let everyone know that that is where we're going. So, touch on the mission, vision, values piece, because I know one, you're extremely good at peeling that and putting that together, peeling that out and putting it together. But how critical that is, because I think it really is the North Star.
Yeah, 100%. It's really truly understanding the why behind the business. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek, as you know, and I really believe that if we have a guiding light for the reason why we serve our clients or the reason why the business was developed in the first place and what the goals are to get there, and we're clear about that with our team and we're clear about that with our clients, then, and to me, that's ultimate transparency. It's like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why my team is here. This is why we're doing what we're doing every day. Then I think, ultimately you can't ever lose. You're always going to be able to, and it is absolutely an exercise worth going through, regardless of the size and scale of your business. If you're doing $1 million in revenue, if you're doing $100 million in revenue, your team, and your clients need to understand the driving force behind why you do what you do. And so that would be mission. Vision is now, what the goals are, call it 3 to 5 years from now. Where do you see the business landing in 5 years from now? And we went through this exercise obviously with our own team, and it's really just truly saying, this is where we're currently at, and this is where I believe we can get if we follow this mission.
Mhm.
And then obviously the values is
And
really
what I
just,
sorry, what I love about the vision, and again, if you listen to the podcast enough, I drive this one home. It's quite simply, vision drives our actions, or drives our actions today, right? Like what I do today is driven by that vision, and if it's not in alignment with that, then what are we doing?
yeah.
Right? So, and I need to, if I have a stretched vision and we're really going for something. Dennis had a very stretched vision. He had a
Mhm.
short timeline to try and exit the business, but needed to increase value of the business before he'd ever want to sell it at that dollar value within a 2 to 3 year period, like that was very ambitious, but very doable when we start taking the right actions in the right order and that right bites of the elephant as you know. But again, because of the vision and because of where we were going, those actions became not negotiable. They're not a choice anymore. It's this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. This is why we're doing it. Now let's share that with the team so we can actually get doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I always my cheesy reference, I guess you could say, we're obviously very competitive on our team. I'm a scoreboard guy. I always want to know like,
Big time.
am I winning? And the vision is the scoreboard. It's like how do I know that I'm getting to the place where I need to get to? Is, all those activities that you talked about, those small actions every single day are getting me to that, and the vision is that scoreboard, right? It's telling me how I'm doing.
Metrics. It's all back to KPIs, metrics, data, measuring, so we can improve. Um, let's hit on a couple of breakthroughs. If you think back on this journey with Dennis over, I mean, this is a pretty short period of time, right? Like less than 8 months here.
Yep.
Now, again, he's been working with us for 2.5 years, made a lot of progress, but then really had to put the foot down if we're going to actually get to that result over the last 8 months. A couple of breakthroughs. What was a breakthrough that either Dennis and or the team had along the way that was like boom, that was the shift that had to happen. I always believe there's one thing that changes everything, and we need to uncover that. Is there one that pops out or screams at you right now that you can think of?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first one that was a major breakthrough for us and I think Dennis and the team was that his current team, the team that exists today, had far more capacity than I think that they ever realized.
Mm.
They'd been doing 20 homes a year for a consistent number of years. Things didn't necessarily feel chaotic, but I don't think that they could ever feel comfortable pushing beyond that because they would just feel like they're losing control. And once we started to introduce those systems and measures in job tread and pull away Dennis from the activities that weren't providing a ton of value to the business in general and allow him to focus on better things, the business started growing. And the team that he had in place was actually able to manage that new business that he was acquiring over time.
I mean, if that's not a breakthrough, that's the big nut that does change everything. And I think based on that, I will say the breakthrough that I remember that came up was the speed of built, right?
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
because the team was able to do this more effectively, efficiently, and they also got rid of because they had time, bandwidth, and time to focus on it. Dennis was no longer in the weeds of the business. He was seeing higher level value, which was improving his subtrade pool, his sub partners, right?
Yep.
And when he actually got rid of 3 or 4 that were actually dragging them down and causing the most chaos and issues, which was causing the team issues, which is why they couldn't actually do more effectively, and they went from 8 month builds to 6, massive breakthrough, right? So
Absolutely.
last week we talked about where the dollars were captured in this business. It was one of those where the breakthrough of the systems and the structure led to, because the number one thing to me was the leveraging of job tread properly, the systems and structure related to that, that then allowed the team to be more effective and efficient, freed Dennis up to focus on higher level activities, which is where the money then got captured.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other part that kind of ties into this as well is Dennis obviously acquired a new development that he's going to be building in
Right.
towards
This
the
is
end of the
during
year.
all of this.
This is during all of this. Now, if this was 2 years ago, he never would have thought, oh man, I could take on another development and feel comfortable and safe doing
No
that,
chance he would have done that.
right?
No chance.
And so that led to him, it's the development there is in a different price point to some of the other product that he's building right now. So he had to get creative and start to value engineer the product that he was going to be building there because he needed to reach a certain price point. And going through that process, because he had the time to be
Yeah.
able to do it, he actually started to learn that he could get products at cheaper prices, that he could work with different various different trades, and that he would be able to get the price into the right price range that would work within that development. And he never would have had the time to do that before, never would have even considered doing it.
And wouldn't have considered doing it because he got comfortable with his suppliers over, years of working with them and
Hmm.
comfortable with the level of price point in the homes that he was currently building.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's really there's a handful of breakthroughs really that all sort of like, I would say they almost like the domino effect of that first breakthrough that just went, it all starts just rolling,
Yep.
which leads to, and guys, in all of our businesses, there's one thing that changes everything. I think a big part of what Four Level has to do and has to find is what is that one thing that's really going to be that biggest domino that's going to start toppling all these other opportunities to be uncovered. So we've shared a few for Dennis, and without getting into what Dennis is doing right now, or who specifically it is, but there's been a strategy over the last year and a half of how is this business going to be sold,
Hmm.
right? Like if we're going to actually sell this business and transition, what is the strategy that has to be found behind that? And part of that is finding someone that can jump into that seat, right? Without getting into a lot of details from confidentiality reasons, but we need to find somebody that can get into that seat that Dennis is now freed up from a lot of the day-to-day stuff that says, okay, here's how we now operate. This is much more streamlined business. It's much more palatable to transition somebody into that role that then can see the value difference of what it is, because it didn't have a ton of value when it was all Dennis, right? And this is, guys, when it's all us, when it's all you as the value of the business doesn't have a lot of value, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
the business increase in value comes from you no longer being the value. It's weird. It's hard to kind of wrap our head around that. And I think lots of times us as builders, entrepreneurs, business owners, we want to hold that tight. I need to be the value. I'm the guy. I'm the one. I do it all, but the truth is the business has very little value when that's the position we're in. And so, it's been a really interesting journey to see that unfolding. And I think just recently, things are kind of coming together on that side, and it's getting kind of exciting. I know we're probably going into some meetings in the next couple of weeks to, dot some I's and cross some T's there. Uh,
Yep.
you know, what would you say? Just I'm thinking about, um, you know, for listener in their own business today, how did they find a breakthrough if they're not working with a coach, and they're on their own and they're looking at, hey, where do I find my breakthroughs? Where do my breakthroughs come from, and how do I go through that breakthrough? I have something in mind. I'm curious, what you would suggest they do to uncover that breakthrough.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think obviously, when you're running a business day to day, the challenges that you're often faced with. If you understand what those challenges are, and then you have the ability to then prioritize which ones are going to be the biggest needle movers for the business, then those are the ones that you start to lean into and focus on and get better at. And if you know what your biggest challenges are, what there are the highest leverage points for value for the business, you start to target those, then you'll really start to gain momentum. And I think the biggest breakthrough, I think, for any business is starting to experience that momentum of, okay,
Mm.
I have the ability, I can do this, I can make change, I can get buy-in from my team. I can slowly start to extract myself away from the day-to-day operations and transition those to other team members. And I think probably the one that comes up most frequently for all of our clients is there's always a fear or a reluctance to bring new people on board because of the salary, the financial burden, the challenge that that potentially creates. And I think for most of our clients, they have a huge breakthrough when they see when we bring somebody on board, it actually not only generates enough money to cover their salary, but it sometimes generates three, four, 5x what their salary is.
Well, in Emily's case from last week, I mean, it's clearly we Dennis shared the numbers with us. That's a 10x return on that salary. And
Yeah,
that salary was not something that Dennis really wanted to pay when we discussed the point that if this is going to shift and change, we have to put somebody in a seat here, or none, like we just will never, we won't have any of the resources around us to do what's necessary. So there was a key role that was missing. That was it. That role then developed into a number of other things. I think that's where value comes from too. We hire someone for a specific role and purpose. And then we realize their skill sets and we see where we can leverage them in other areas that there's no way we could have there's no way that you would have knew or in advance that Emily was going to help sell.
yeah,
Impossible at that time,
yeah.
right? Then she develops the skill set because it was a system and a structure and it changes everything. So I think one, we can increase revenue. I love that because that is the breakthrough. It's the one person that changes the game. It's the increase of revenue by having that person, but it's also capturing the dollars that were falling through the cracks before that it didn't have time to focus on. That alone will make us more money than we pay that person almost 100% of the time,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
right? So this becomes a multiplier. It's very difficult though when you're standing on the edge of the cliff and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of money here. But where's that money going to come from? I always say, remember, guys, you're not paying that entire salary in one lump sum up front. We pay for that a weekly or bi-weekly basis,
Yeah.
right? So I just need to get through that first month or two to find where the dollars are falling here. And if I capture a handful of them, I'm already either halfway to paying that salary, or I'm already all the way to paying that salary within 30 to 60 days.
Yeah, if you bring somebody on board and that gives you, let's just say conservatively, 10 hours a week back into
Yeah.
your
And that's
bandwidth
very
and time.
conservative.
Yeah, it's very conservative. Imagine what you could do with an extra 10 hours a week in order to uncover the holes in your business, recover cash, and make substantial improvements. That's the way that I've always kind of thought about it.
Right. So I think that's a great place to kind of wrap here, because it's that one thing that does change everything. It is difficult as we stand at the edge of the cliff to be able to jump off, but the moment we jump and we see what's possible, that's what changes. But you also hit on something else about momentum. When those things change, and I see that difference, right? Able to trust and let go. Something changes. We start getting momentum, guys. All that you need is to take that step, take that action based on your goals and vision, and then feel that momentum and that shift, and everything becomes a whole lot easier and more trusting to continue to move forward. Um, last insight, last line, where do we go? What do we do? What do I need to do right now? And I know this is on the spot, but what do I need to do?
Just calm down.
Mm,
Everybody's in the same boat as you in various iterations or sizes or scales of their business. They're all facing similar challenges, whether big or small. There is light at the end of the tunnel for everyone, I believe, and it's just with a slow, methodical approach, trusting that you can eventually step away from the business over time and develop something that is truly great and scalable, and you'll be able to exit from and get a really great life out of.
amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Mike. I love this. These last two sessions have been so cool to share these insights. Guys, this is a podcast about action. So please take some action on one of these items, some breakthrough, figure that thing out for yourself, and we'll see you on the next episode again. Thank you, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.